Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about lenses and what lenses do I recommend for beginner photographer and videographer to buy. Now, bonus as well, in this video, I'm going to be talking about what body should you buy, a full-frame mirrorless Canon RP or a somewhat starter 90D DSLR. We're going to work our way up from the wide-angle lens that you should have to the medium and telephoto. And we're going to be comparing it to really expensive lenses as well to know where you actually lose out or win comparing to more expensive L lenses. So giving you a perfect educated guess on what are the lenses that you should buy and what should you skip. So in the wide angle range, I highly recommend for beginner shooters to check out the EFS 10-22, 3.5 to 4.5. Now if you are somewhat okay with shooting okay videos and you're okay with shooting okay photos, this lens is a great option for you. I think that this lens has a little bit of noise when it tries to wax in focus, and that's also is inherent in these kind of cheap lenses. So when you have a 10mm, not are you very close, your subject has to be really close to the camera, especially when you're trying to record video that I'm trying my best to make the best imitation of that sound, but does that sound the same like in your ears?
Yeah, pretty much, very accurate.
And now let's look into the medium range which we recommend, and we have here the 50mm 1.8. Now there's two, don't be confused. Why are we bothered to even look into these two differences? Is there any difference at all? Yes, there is. Listen to the sound of what this 50mm Mark II makes. And now listen to the sound of what this 50mm STM makes. Now on the side note, let's look into focus breathing, racking in focus from infinity to the closest that we can on these two lenses. And these are the differences that we get. So now we've covered the medium lens of the 50mm. Let's work our way up to telephoto. So what kind of telephoto lens do I recommend? I highly recommend you getting the 85 1.8 lens. So looking into photo and video, when you're trying to get really close-up shots of someone's face, say an interview, you want to get the tight shot, this is where the 85 does wonders. Now I think that 1.8 wide open, it looks sharp, it looks great for video, it looks so nice for photos, and I highly recommend wedding videographers or photographers to check this lens out. So now we've talked about lenses. Now let's look into the next chapter of this video, which is into what body should I buy, moving in from the RP or from the 90D. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the 90D, what I love and what I don't like about the 90D. Starting as a photographer, shooting in crop sensor isn't exactly the most thrilling thing you can actually achieve, but it gets the job done. So if you're looking to go into weddings and you're looking to get into sports, I highly recommend the 90D being an option for you, mainly because it basically runs on a Digic 8 processor and it has auto eye tracking. Now, if you go for any models lesser than that of the 90D, say in the 2017 era models, you basically lose out in eye detect focus and animal detect eye focus. The 90D excels at 11.5 frames per second. And I really do appreciate this camera shooting in so fast, especially when you're going into sports photography. So if you're going into sports photography with the crop sensor of 1.6, you actually get a higher focal length than that of an EF full frame. Now let's look into video for the 90D. The video basically has incredible 4K up to 30 frames, 4K 25, 4K 23.976, and 1080 at 60, 1080 at 25. The best part, 1080 at 120 frames per second. Without autofocus, but who needs it anyways? This is one of the greatest options that you have coming from a beginner. Having the option of shooting at 120, it was only available in the 1DX Mark II line, which is a $6,500 camera, which is equivalent to about 22,000 ringgit at the point of release. And that was true from the 1DX Mark II line up to 2019 when the 90D came in with a 1080 at 120 frames per second. So if you're shooting video and you want to go really slow-mo, I highly recommend you going for the 90D solely because it shoots full HD at 120 frames per second. What about its 4K? So at 4K, you have an option for crop and uncrop. Wow, this is insane. So you're telling me that I can shoot 4K somewhat uncropped? What does that mean? It's a crop sensor camera and I'm not cropping. So let me explain. On this sensor, the 1.6 crop, I can shoot full HD and I can shoot 4K basically without cropping it even further. Now the same can't be said for the Canon RP, which we'll get into that later, Walter. The beauty of this part is that now I can have the ability to choose my resolution being in 4K or 1080, and I don't have to worry about crop. However, there is a crop mode for this camera. The crop mode essentially adds on an additional crop to an already cropped camera. And now why do you want to do that? Well, basically you get a further reach and you get a sharper, nicer 4K image. Now with that in mind, I really do like the 90D's video files. I really do think it's very easy to edit. All of them are in IPB. They don't have C-Log, and they have an audio jack for you to monitor audio. All right, so with this in mind, let's look into the Canon RP. Take it away, Walter.
So the thing about the Canon RP is that it's a budget model. So it's supposed to be the lesser versions of all the other, all the other more extravagant cameras. So features are highly crippled. I think
I
we're all
wouldn't say
familiar with
crippled. They are hidden. Well, he's right.
Yeah.
It's basically stolen
Yeah.
away. So what are the stolen features?
So firstly, things like as you mentioned, the crop 4K. I think that's a big deal for most people. You're shooting 4K and then you're thinking, why does my footage not look the same as when I was shooting 1080p? Because there is a massive 1.7 times crop on the 4K image, and that presents a lot of issues actually. And you basically don't get a full sensor readout of the 4K. Then what it kind of negates the purpose of having a full frame camera anyways. And that's not even the worst part. If you think crop 4K is bad, the face detect autofocus does not work. Really have to keep in mind is that you lose dual pixel autofocus, which is we all know that it's a good autofocusing system, but you can't use it. You're set back 10 years to contrast detect autofocus. So other than that, a few gripes that I have with this being a pro camera is that the custom functions do not work for video. They only work for photo. So that is not the case for cameras like the 90D, where you can set the video functions to different custom functions already, so you don't have to keep digging into menus and changing your shutter speeds and stuff when you want to change your frame rates. And also, that is a major drawback with this camera. Apart from that, if you're shooting a lot of video, the battery life on this is not going to be what you expect from a more professional camera. It's not going to be close to the 90D because it uses these LPE17 batteries to keep the size down. Lastly, what I would consider a really big drawback is the fact that this camera, it is an advantage that it's light, but as soon as you slap on these big, high quality lenses that you want to have when you shoot a full frame sensor, you're gonna get really hard to balance systems. You'll have the massive 85mm lens and your camera's constantly falling forwards, and it's not pleasant.
Wow. Does that happen to you? No?
Yeah, it's you can use an 85mm lens, the 1.4, right? It's really hard to balance.
Let's try it out.
Okay, let's check this out. Check it out.
So your comment about this camera is that it's really hard to use when you're slapping on a really expensive lens on the RP.
Yeah. So you gotta use cheaper, lighter lenses. So.
All right. Yeah, I do see the problem right now. I don't think I can balance this on the gimbal.
You're definitely not gonna be able to.
It's just so front heavy. Mm-hmm. It's just too front heavy for me to balance this thing on the gimbal. So
yeah.
Odd. But I love it somehow. Because it's odd. There you go.
Well, yeah. So yeah, apart from that, photo-wise, this camera is nice. Video-wise, the quality of the video is nice. A lot of people would complain about the dynamic range. It's kind of lacking in the dynamic range department, which most cameras, especially the other brands that are really good with dynamic ranges, they do really well in that. This camera is probably, you would expect, the worst out of the full-frame cameras from Canon. would come from this one. I don't know. There are certain things that piss me off with this camera. The fact that like, dude, no, like I have to complain about this, right? Why can't you set this to ISO? Like this dial here, it's perfect if I put this to ISO, this one to shutter speed, and then I have the control ring. I have so many things that I love about this camera, but there's these small things that really just piss me off.
FYI, he's planning to sell his camera.
Yeah, I want to sell it. Does anyone
Why
want
he's
my
raging?
RP?
He's taking this opportunity to rage on my channel on how bad the RP really is.
It's nice. It's a nice camera. It's a nice camera. Except for these kind of like stupid things that they kind of leave out. Like, you know what? Anybody want my camera?
I think moving into photos as well for the Canon RP, it only captures at about 3 to 5 frames per second.
Yes, correct.
With continuous autofocus.
Yes.
Whereas the 90D got it at 11.5 frames per second.
Insane.
So moving to how technology advances between, they're both about the same year, isn't it?
Yeah.
About 2019.
Yeah.
It's just that one is being a crop sensor DSLR to that of being a mirrorless camera. So moving into what we would recommend as starting out as a videographer or photographer. If you're very serious into photography, I would steer clear away from the 90D for one reason. It is a crop sensor camera. Now, coming in from a crop sensor camera and using some EF lenses like the 50mm and the 85, you tend to notice a big... It's because you're basically paying premium for an EF lens, but you're stripping away the EF qualities and making it EFS. And let's talk about EFS. There isn't a lot of very serious lenses in EFS. So, coming into down to the ultimate thoughts, I really do think that if you're going into photography, check the EOS RP out solely because it is a full frame camera and it is Canon's R series camera, which is mirrorless, and that's where all the new technology is heading towards. And DSLR is somewhat phasing out. But if you're going into video, and coming from the fact that 4K doesn't really work on this RP, it somewhat does have it, but it doesn't work. Autofocus doesn't work. It has a 1.7 crop, and 1.7 crop, last I checked, is more than a 1.6 crop. So technically, you could get by with better 4K images with dual pixel autofocus on a 90D as opposed to the RP. So if you're a video shooter, highly recommend you checking out the 90D instead. So with this in mind, I think we've given you an educated guess. I would say, for you to decide on which are the two cameras that you want to opt for in your future photo or video productions. Now, if you have any other further questions, you can drop down in the comment section down below. If not, hit like, subscribe, and if you want to support this channel, there is a Pond 5 link down below, which is the stock royalty footage, and you can go into my link and click onto any of the videos that I've performed, and some of these videos can be purchased as a license for your personal project or use it into your commercial work. Now, when you purchase this footage, I get a little bit of an additional income from that to support the channel, and we're going to be shooting at our next content video, which is basically on the R7 to that of the R6. The RS is going to be speed boosted. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching again. Take your water for enjoying this content with me. And I'll catch you again in the next episode. And please, buy his RP.
Please buy my RP.